Is é an sprid ina bhfuil míad bailithe le chéile in ómh ná sprid an ómóis agus an cuoinecháin. Ar ábhraí an tíl, níl imachtaí mar úfáis bhí an bhárta 1923 ag tarlú in éireann an léanúmh. Ach ag an am céine, tá dúlgas oring, cuiinmh agus machna bhí dhéanamh ar stair. Agus ag déanamh sin, tá oring rudí álam ón sprid díobh siúd a tháinig sláán, agus rééis sí mar aim legathe amach acu, cabhrú lena gúnta agus a dír a bhogach an cín. In the history of our country, we have many moments which we remember with immense pride. Many heroic events and personalities who we honour as central to our national story. Over recent years, both locally and nationally, we have gathered to celebrate some of the most important figures and events in our history. In doing this, we have reflected on what we owe to the great generation which sacrificed and achieved so much in our revolution. Yet, if we are to be honest in remembering our past, we must also make time for darker events, for moments which no one could possibly be proud of and which left deep scars. Unquestionably, the brutal massacre in Ballyseedy on the night of the 6th and 7th of March 1923 marked one of the lowest points in our national story. Even after 100 years, what happened here retains the power to shock. But we come here today not to reopen wounds or to insist on one version of our history. No, we come here to honour the memory of those young lives lost on that night and in other events in Kerry that terrible month. We come here with reflection and with respect for the spirit which helped Kerry and our country to get through those days, to move forward and to rebuild a sense of community. In the years of our revolution, Kerry played a central role. Its people were united and endured much in our fight for independence. They bequeathed to new generations a long roll of honour containing the names of Kerry men and women who were willing to sacrifice everything for our country. They believed, and they've been proven right time and again, that the Irish people, in charge of their own destiny, could grow and prosper amongst the nations of the world. But this unity did not survive the impact of the treaty and the outbreak of civil war. The insistence by the departing power that it should retain the power to impose conditions on the new state was the direct and undeniable cause of this division. And it is the great tragedy of 1922 that formerly close comrades were not given the space and freedom to find a different way forward. While there were harsh words spoken, and these got harsher as time went on, throughout the private papers of the first half of 1922, you find leaders desperate to bridge the widening gap with friends who were fast becoming enemies. Within just over 2 months, the ultimate outcome of the Civil War was already clear, but it was then that the worst events began. By the beginning of March 1923, something close to normal life had returned to much of the country as the government forces overwhelmed Republicans. The strength of the Republican cause in Kerry meant that fighting continued here. The government forces had for nearly 7 months controlled most of the country, yet resistance remained stubborn. I believe that the terrible crimes committed by government forces against prisoners deserve to be singled out and condemned in and of themselves. But an honest remembrance must also acknowledge other incidents which were the responsibility of others. In particular, we cannot remember March 1923 without acknowledging that the blowing up of 5 soldiers at Knocknagoshel was a cruel and terrible act. It caused genuine shock throughout the community, even amongst those in whose name it was carried out. It is the mark of honest democratic remembrance to combine honouring your own with genuinely reflecting on the hurt caused to others, and to be willing to admit when there are different stories to be respected. It is understandable that news of Knocknagoshel was met with anger, though what happened in the days and weeks later was not because of any righteous motive. It reflected a brutal lawlessness which was already evident in the actions of certain men wearing uniforms which were supposed to represent legal authority, but actually gave them impunity for some of the worst actions seen in our modern history. There was a concerted effort to cover up what happened here and then at Countess Bridge and Behags. But the people of Kerry and the authorities always knew the truth. It was premeditated murder, nothing less. When Stephen Fuller ultimately put on the public record the full story of what happened on that night, the power of his words came from the fact that he told the simple, unblemished facts of young men being led to their planned deaths. He said, "We were made lie flat down in the lorry and taken out to Ballyseedy. And they tied us then, our hands behind our back, and left about a foot between the hands and the next fellow. They tied us in a circle then around the mine, and they tied our legs then, and the knees as well with a rope. And then they threw off our caps, and they said we could be praying away now, as long as we like. So the next fellow to me said his prayers, and I said mine too. But I still kept watching where they went. It was that saved me afterwards. But he said goodbye then, and I said goodbye, and the next fellow picked it up, and he said goodbye. Goodbye, lads, and up it went, and I went up with it." And with that, 8 young lives were lost. Fuller's miraculous survival is why the full truth could not be hidden in spite of a concerted cover-up. His service as a member of Fianna Fáil and as a Fianna Fáil TD means that we have a special duty to remember him and honour his life. Though, let there be no doubt, the story of Stephen Fuller and his comrades belongs to no one party. It is part of our national story, and one which we must never allow to be forgotten. Speaking nearly 6 decades after the events, Stephen Fuller's voice is one of sadness and reflection. He is not seeking vengeance. He is not calling us to keep up the fight. No, he is asking that we remember, that we understand the truth, that we never let such terrible things happen again in our country. And Stephen Fuller was providing a final and complete refutation of the false stories spread in the days and months after Ballyseedy, all designed to pretend that these men were killed clearing mines planted by their own comrades. We should also today pay tribute to those who have worked so hard to make sure that the full truth of what happened here and elsewhere in Kerry has been made public. Pat Butler's documentary, first broadcast 25 years ago, is one of the finest examples of public service broadcasting in our history. Its clarity and fearlessness had an impact far beyond that achieved by any other historical documentary. The recent series of articles by the Irish Examiner have shown again how important professional journalism is in providing us with a picture of the diversity, complexity, and emotion we can see in our past. And of course, different historians have spent countless hours reconstructing the full details of the events, personalities, and emotions of the Civil War in Kerry and its many scars. The recent book by Eoin O'Shea is an example of scholarship of the highest standards. When we look back at the full record of March 1923, we have every right to say that this was a terrible crime, and the failure to stop the lawlessness or hold anyone to account is to the shame of everyone involved. The cover-up and the false statements by government in claiming that these deaths came from clearing mines was infamous then, and they remain so today. And it is essential that we understand that in saying this, we are not trying to impose the values of today onto the past. This is a common failing when we talk about Irish history. But it is not relevant here because there is no doubt that 100 years ago, everyone understood that what happened at Ballyseedy was unjustifiable. Even within the government, there were active disputes about the refusal to intervene, demand accountability, and stop the brutality. For example, we can see this from the comments of Cahir Davitt, who served as the chief judge of the army throughout the Civil War. The son of Michael Davitt, he had headed the Dáil courts during the War of Independence, and he fought an ongoing battle within the new army to demand even basic adherence to the rule of law. In his official statement in the Bureau of Military History, he is clear in describing Ballyseedy as an outrage, committed by soldiers and tantamount to what he termed unofficial executions. Davitt felt, I believe correctly, that the cause of the new state and rebuilding national unity was gravely damaged. In spite of having created constitutional and legal mechanisms for quite brutal actions, the amnesty which was implemented after the war and the destruction of many records showed that no matter what was said publicly, leaders knew that many actions were illegal and unjustifiable. In truth, when you look at the events of the 9 months of the Civil War, it's impossible to miss the fact that most of the worst events of the war happened after its ultimate outcome had become obvious. By March 1923, it was well understood that the new state was no longer in danger and the Republican forces had no real objectives. What happened at Ballyseedy, Countess Bridge and Behags, and in the executions of 81 prisoners, left a trail of bitterness which was an enormous burden for the new state to carry as it faced so many challenges. However, we did move beyond the events of March 1923. We did rebuild a deep and enduring sense of community. I think a major part of the reason why this happened is because of the actions of many of the men and women on both sides who were involved. Wherever you look in the memoirs and records of the leaders and ordinary participants of the Civil War, you find a reluctance to dwell on what happened, a near complete refusal to indulge in the type of partisanship and celebration which such conflicts have led to in many other countries. Stephen Fuller's decision to wait nearly 6 decades before giving a full public account of what happened at Ballyseedy came from his desire that this place and his people not be defined by acts which no one could be proud of. He did not want to relive that night or to have others refight the struggle. He wanted us to create a new future. The same was true of the overwhelming body of women and men who fought on both sides. I experienced this within my own family. We love to hear the many great stories of the War of Independence, but were met with silence when the period after December 1921 was mentioned. We are one of the few countries in the world where opponents in a civil war have gone on to peacefully succeed each other in democratic elections, or where large numbers moved their political allegiance without changing their minds on the conflict. With very few exceptions, those who experienced the Civil War were determined that it should be the end of armed conflict. For them, the democratic objectives which are at the heart of the 1916 proclamation demanded that we find a way beyond conflict and that we honour the achievements of our independence struggle through using the new opportunities open to us. Ballyseedy is a part of our history which we must never forget. But just as Stephen Fuller and those who served on both sides of that terrible war believed, it cannot define us. In coming here to remember the events of a century ago, it is the spirit of understanding and renewal which we should seek. Tomid Balathe Galéir an Seohanmh agus Fímar mala ihirin níos luha ní chun ceiliúradh ach chun tuiscint a áil ar star achanach tribloidach, agus ceachtainna a ólam ón na leithinte tribloidachach ufasachach sin, conna sprid nua agus níos fearr a chur chun tosaigh sa tír seo. Go a míle maithagad as ach le tribloid.
To remember, to commemorate all that happened in Ballyseedy 100 years ago. I particularly want to acknowledge that we're joined by a number of mayors here in the county, and we have Mikey, Mayor of Tralee, Niall, Killarney, Mike Shea, Castleisland, Corkagina, and we have all our councillors, including Governor, who has travelled to be with us as well from the Cork end of things. Very pleased as well that former Minister John O'Donoghue is here, former TD John Brazel, delighted that he's here, that our MEP Billy is here as well, and indeed that our Oireachtas members are here from the Seanad, Ned and Mark. Thank you all for being here. I'm particularly pleased, of course, that so many of the family of Fianna Fáil are here, and indeed friends of Fianna Fáil are here as well. And I particularly want to acknowledge the presence of the Fuller family. We're honoured beyond measure that they are here with us, that they are part of this remembrance. Stephen Fuller is integral and inextricably linked with the story of Fianna Fáil here in Kerry, and his distinguished service over so many long years, and a service that was followed on by Paddy and others within his family as a service of public service for the benefit of community. And so we're very honoured to be joined by Pascal and by Noel and by Paddy and the extended members of the family here today. And I know many of them travelled from far afield to be here, but you are central to all that we're doing here today, so thank you very much for that. You know, much has happened here in Kerry over these last 2 weeks, and a very strong light is shining on civil war as experienced here in Kerry. And we've had an excellent conference over the last 2 weeks as well, focusing on the experiences of so many different people and so many different stories to be told around the Civil War. And in that time, it has given us all an opportunity to rethink and to refocus once again on the stories and experiences of so many within our own families, and indeed in this instance within our own party. And in that time as well, it has given me an opportunity to do a lot of reading, and in the midst of all the reading, and Owen O'Shea has a wonderful book, I'm sure many of you have read it, No Middle Path. But along with that, I've also reread quite recently a wonderful poem that was written by Seamus Heaney, a poem that he called The Cure at Troy. And in that poem, he speaks about the enormous capacity of people to inflict pain and suffering on each other. He speaks of man's inhumanity to man. And in that poem, he talks about human beings suffering, and he tells us they torture one another, they get hurt and they get hard. And there is probably no greater example of man's inhumanity to man when we look at the Civil War here in Kerry, and there have been many horrific instances, and earlier today we were in Knocknagoshel also. But the horror that was visited upon so many families here during the time of Civil War, and we particularly remember as we gather here what happened in Ballyseedy. But it struck me that in that poem also, Seamus Heaney spoke about the need to go beyond the experience. He maintains in the poem that if humanity is to survive, if we are to thrive going forward, we must choose to live lives on the far side of revenge. He tells us in the poem that we need to believe that a further shore is reachable than what we experience in the immediate. And it has struck me that no one more than Stephen Fuller lived that. The notion of going beyond the far side of revenge and believing in a further shore of potential, possibility and peace. And in fact, Paddy, whom we love dearly here in Fianna Fáil in Kerry, he is a man of extraordinary giftedness, a man of extraordinary generosity. We love him dearly and we treasure him. And in one of his many interviews of recent days, Paddy spoke in a local paper where he told the tale of his father Stephen speaking to him about his experience at the Civil War, and we're conscious that Stephen Fuller did not speak quite a lot on the Civil War. But in the newspaper article, and I'm going to quote Paddy here directly, because Paddy would tell me afterwards I got it wrong. So, Paddy, I'm taking this from the paper. And this is what Paddy said in the paper. Be careful, says Paddy. But this is what Paddy said in a local publication, speaking about his father, Stephen Fuller. And he said, he held no bitterness against those who tried to blow him up. In fact, he was full of forgiveness. My father, Stephen, once said to me that the Civil War divisions should not be passed on to the next generation. For Stephen Fuller, that's the end of the quote now, but for Stephen Fuller, I believe, there was no solace in hatred. There was no search for atonement. Peace came from absolution. For Stephen Fuller, reconciliation afforded him a lens through which he could reset the past and concentrate on the future. What a wonderful legacy Stephen Fuller and his family have left us in terms of picking up the pieces, accepting what has happened, but moving forward in a spirit of reconciliation. We live in a world today, a world of conflict. We have in Europe a war that we had hoped that we would never see. There is much that we can learn from Stephen Fuller today. And so, as we remember all that happened at Ballyseedy, and there will be no one more eloquent than the Taoiseach to actually do that, but as we remember the decision made by the one man who survived the awful tragedy of Ballyseedy, and that was to choose a path of reconciliation, to move forward, to extend the hand of friendship. We honour him today as we honour all those who were massacred at Ballyseedy. Gurmila Mahagov Galer.
Ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries and honoured guests, I really am not able to cover all the people that are here visiting actually. Just saying, my name is Pascal Fuller and I am the third son of Stephen Fuller, who I'm sure you all know I was the sole survivor of the Ballyseedy massacre on the 7th of March. On behalf of the family, I wish to thank Fianna Fáil for organising today's commemoration and to thank in particular our Taoiseach Micheál Martin and Minister Norma Foley for their attendance. Before proceeding, I am very pleased to compliment Micheál Martin on his excellent performance as Taoiseach, surprising many with his ability and leadership skills and raising the profile of both the party and himself. Well done, Michael. Stephen Fuller, in surviving the Ballyseedy massacre, was able to tell the true story of what happened and denied the false account that 9 prisoners taken from the jail in Tralee were killed accidentally whilst removing a booby-trap barricade. He didn't speak much of his ordeal, but luckily he recounted the facts to Dorothy McArdle for the tragedies of Kerry and to Robert Keefe for a BBC documentary, The History of Ireland. Based on these interviews and film footage, Pat Butler of RTE, who's with us today here, made a programme about the event which was screened on television a number of years ago, covering both sides of the argument. It is, however, disappointing that RTE appear unwilling to air this documentary for the 100th anniversary for reasons unknown. I am sure there would be great interest in it, as it deals with not only Ballyseedy but Knocknagoshel as well. After the explosion, he made good his escape through the river and woods to May Dolly's house and was in a coma for 2 days and on the run for 15 months hiding out in different locations, including with the courtesy of the Herlihy family, who provided him with food and shelter in a dugout. Medical care was provided by Dr. Shanahan in Tralee. He had great difficulty in sleeping, actually. He said he didn't sleep for about 15 months, but I don't believe that, actually. But morphine, Dr. Shannon was given morphine injections and he said they had no effect on him, actually. Between the ages of 11 and 12, he brought each of us, his 4 sons, individually to the site on the road where he stood and recounted the events to us, mentioning the names of those responsible for what had happened, but counselling us not to harbour any feelings of hatred and revenge, which is what the Minister has just talked about there, actually. I remember on one occasion as a young boy in 1955 when he brought me to Dublin for the Ardèche and introduced me to Dev in the round room in the Mansion House. Back in the Exchange Hotel in Parliament Street where we were staying, he had a heated argument with a Free State supporter from Listowel about the Civil War. Tommy Kellestrom was also there. Later, back in our room, I asked him which side was right, and he replied, they were right, but they were wrong. It took me years to understand what he meant, until one evening I was telling poet Brendan Kennelly about it, and as Brendan was very interested in hearing all about him, being another North Kerry man, he suggested that his understanding could be that the Free State government had the right and the mandate from the people to pursue the Civil War, but were wrong to have fought the conflict in the way they did, executing and murdering anti-treaty prisoners and volunteers captured in the field of battle in cold blood. It has been suggested in recent books that he suffered from PTSD, but from my knowledge of him, I have never noticed that PTSD had any effect on him. He played hurling for Kilflynn actually, and he won a medal for the North. He was captain of the team to won the North Kerry League back in 1933, and that medal is in the hands of my wife, who is now wearing it this evening. I was born in 1943 and had the consolation. He joined Fianna Fáil Party, which was founded and served as a TD for North Kerry from 1937 until 1943, losing his seat to Dan Spring. I was born in 1943 and had the consolation that year of gaining another son for the lost seat. I also inherited his name, Stephen, but being born on Easter Saturday and christened on Easter Sunday, was given the additional name Pascal, which has been my handle ever since. Right. Today we are mourning and honouring the memory of those 8 martyrs murdered in Ballyseedy: John Daly, Patrick Buckley, James Walsh, Pat Hartnett, George O'Shea, Tim Toomey, Michael O'Connell and John O'Connor, and pray for their souls, may they rest in peace. In remembering those victims, I would also like to remember Stephen Fuller himself, who died in 1984 at the age of 84. His first wife, Mary Toomey, she was a sister of Tim Toomey, one of the 8 men killed in Ballyseedy. They were married in 1931 and she died in 1933. They had a daughter, Eileen, who died in 1932. Also to remember and mourn my mother, Annie O'Brien, who married our father in 1938 and died in 1992. And while I'm at it, our brother Joe and his wife Cora and Paddy's wife Mary, all recently deceased. May they rest in peace. His legacy is that of a survivor and a man of compassion and forgiveness, leaving behind 4 sons, 4 families, 13 grandchildren, and 24 great-grandchildren. Thank you very much.
Legan a shroud,